Majority Leader is recognized.
Terminated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, we're on the motion to proceed to calendar number 341. Is that true?
Senator is correct.
I have a cloture motion at the desk.
Clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 341 S. 2237, the Small Business Jobs and Tax Relief Act, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the names not be read.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the mentor quorum under Rule 22 be waived. At 2:15 p.m. Tuesday, July 10th, there will be 10 minutes equally divided between the two leaders or the designees prior to a vote on the motion to vote cloture on the motion to proceed to S. 2237.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that on Tuesday, July 10th, 2012 at 11:30, the Senate proceed to executive session to consider nomination calendar number 661. There will be 30 minutes for debate, equally divided in the usual form. Upon the use or relating back of that time, the Senate proceed to vote on that matter with no intervening action or debate. The motion to reconsider be considered made and laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate. That no further motions be in order, that any related statements be printed in the record. That President Obama be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate then resume legislative session.
Without objection, so ordered.
I shall consent the Senate proceed to executive session, and the foreign relations can be discharged from further consideration of presidential nomination 1680. That the nomination be confirmed, the motion reconsider be laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate, that no further statements be in order. Further motions be in order, to the nomination that any related statements be printed in the record, and that President Obama be notified of the Senate's action.
Without objection, so ordered.
I unanimous consent that the Committee on Commerce be discharged from further consideration of presidential nomination 442, 461, 462. That's 442, 461, 462, 1671, 1377, and 1734. That the nominations be confirmed, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid on the table. That there be no intervening action or debate. That no further motion be in order to the nomination that any related statements be printed in the record. That the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Without objection, so ordered. I
ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to consider calendars numbered 726, 764, 765, 766, 767, 768, 769, 770, 771, 772, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77. No, skip. Erase 70, 77. It doesn't fit in here. 778, 819, 820, 821, 822, 823, and 824. That the nomination be confirmed en bloc. The motion to reconsider be considered made and laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate, and no further motion be in order to any of the nominations, and that any related statements be printed in the record, and that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Without objection, so ordered.
I ask unanimous consent the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee be discharged from further consideration of presidential nomination 1121. That the nomination be confirmed, the motion reconsidered be considered made and laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate. That there be no further motions in order to the nomination. Any related statements be printed in the record. That the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate then resume legislative session.
Without objection, so ordered.
I now ask, Mr. President, we proceed to pre-morning business. Senators allowed to speak for 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
I ask consent the Senate proceed to consideration H.R. 6064.
The clerk will report.
H.R. 6064, an act to provide an extension of federal aid highway and so forth and for other purposes.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the bill be read 3 times, passed. The motion reconsider be laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate. May statements related to this matter be placed in the record at the appropriate place as if given.
Without objection, so ordered.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to calendar number 437.
Clerk will report.
Calendar number 437, S2165, a bill to enhance strategic cooperation between the United States and Israel and for other purposes.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
Mr. President, I further ask the committee report and substitute amendment be agreed to. The bill as amended be read a 3rd time passed. The Senate proceed to a vote on passage of that bill as amended.
Without, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it.
Thanks, Mr. President. I ask that the motion to reconsider be laid on the table
Without objection.
and that there be no intervening action or debate, and any statements related to this matter be printed in the record at the appropriate place as if given.
Without objection.
I ask
so ordered.
consent. Thank you, Mr. President. Did I interrupt? No, sorry. I ask unanimous consent the Veteran Affairs Committee be discharged from further consideration of S3238.
Clerk will report.
S3238, a bill to designate the Department of Veterans Affairs Community-Based Outpatient Clinic in Mansfield, Ohio as the David F. Winder Department of Veterans Affairs Community-Based Outpatient Clinic and for other purposes.
Without objection, the committee is discharged and the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the bill be read 3 times passed. The motion reconsider be laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate. Any related statements be printed in the record as if read.
Without objection, so ordered.
I now ask unanimous consent the Judicial Committee discharged from further consideration and the Senate proceed to S-Res 376.
Clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 376, commemorating the 225th anniversary of the signing of the Constitution of the United States and so forth and for other purposes.
Without objection, the committee is discharged and the Senate will proceed to consideration of the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, motion considered made and laid on the table.
Without objection, so ordered.
I ask now unanimous consent the Senate proceed to S3363.
Clerk will report.
S3363, a bill to provide for the use of National Infantry Museum and Soldier Center commemorative coin surcharges and for other purposes.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the bill be read a 3rd time passed. The motion reconsider be laid on the table. And any statements related to this bill appear in the record at the appropriate place as if read.
Without objection, so ordered.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to calendar number 439.
The clerk will report.
Calendar number 439, S2239, a bill to direct the head of each agency to treat relevant military training as sufficient to satisfy training or certification requirements for federal licenses.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the committee reported substitute amendment be agreed to. The bill as amended then be read a 3rd time passed. The motion reconsider be laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate. Any statements related to this matter be placed in the record as if given.
Without objection, so ordered.
I'm told that H.R. 4018 is due, that is due for its first reading.
Clerk will report.
H.R. 4018, an act to improve the Public Safety Officers Benefits Program.
Mr. President, I would now object to my request for second reading.
Objection is heard. The bill will be read for the 2nd time on the next legislative day.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that from Friday, June 29th through Monday, June 9th, the Majority Leader and Senator Cardin be authorized to sign duly enrolled bills or resolutions.
Without objection, so ordered.
I ask unanimous consent that notwithstanding the upcoming recess or adjournment of the Senate, the President of the Senate, the President pro tempore, and the majority and minority leaders be authorized to make appointments to commissions, committees, boards, conferences, or interparliamentary conferences authorized by law by concurrent action of two houses or by order of the Senate.
Without objection, so ordered.
I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it adjourn and convene for pro forma sessions only, with no business conducted.
Without objection, so ordered.
Read the whole thing. Keep reading.
Mr. President, we'll start over on this. I ask consent the Senate, when the Senate completes its business today, adjourn and convene for pro forma sessions only, with no business conducted on the following dates and times, and that following each pro forma session, the Senate adjourn until the next pro forma session, Tuesday, July 2nd at 12 p.m., Friday, July 6th at 12 p.m., and then that the Senate adjourn on Friday, July 6th until 2 p.m. on Monday, July 9th, unless the Senate has received a message from the House that it has adopted S-Con-Res 51, which is the adjournment resolution. And if the Senate has received such a message, the Senate adjourn until Monday, July 9th at 2 p.m. Under the provisions S-Con-Res 51, the following the pledge adjournment proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired, and the time for the two leaders be reserved for use later in the day. That the majority leader be recognized and the senators be permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection, so ordered.
Carry. President, as previously announced, there will be no roll call votes on Monday, July 9th. The next roll call vote will be at noon on Tuesday, July 10th, on the confirmation of the Folks nomination. If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that adjourn under the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until Tuesday, July 2nd at 12 p.m. unless the Senate receives a message that the House has agreed to S-Con-Res 51, in which case the Senate stands adjourned until 2 p.m. on Monday, July 9. Thanks.
The Senate today passed a House-Senate compromise combining 3 bills. All cover programs that are about to expire. The compromise continues highway and transit programs for the next 2 years, student loan rates of 3.4% for another year, and the National Flood Control Program for 5 more years. The measure now goes to President Obama for his signature. And senators are leaving for a week-long 4th of July break. Live coverage when the Senate returns here on C-SPAN 2. Author David Petruzza writes about the presidents.
And Harry Truman goes to the White House and says to Eleanor Roosevelt, "Can I pray for you?" And she says, "No."